Hi, my name is Lucy Brown, and I'm one of the student co-hosts of today's show. I just wanted to say, before I talk about what time, the gift of time means to me, I just wanted to say a few things about myself. So my name is Lucy Brown. I'm in year 10 and I'm a Wiradjuri woman, but I live in the Sunshine Coast. One of the biggest things about me is I'm actually transgender, and that has a culture has played a really important part of that, because when I first started transitioning, I didn't have many people to support me. I had my family, but my culture showed me that there are so many people out there who support me. It gave me a voice and it helped me to speak my truth. Now, the gift of time is one of the biggest, it's very important to me, because to give your time is one of the most important gifts you can give ever. Even if you, one of the clearest examples of that is the Black Lives Matter movement. That's one of everybody around the world, millions of people are gifting their time towards this movement. Without the gift of time, the world would be cold and selfish. The elders, they have gifted all of their time, and they have committed their time to making the world, Australia, a greater place, so that us children, Indigenous children, the next generation, will not have to, are not exposed to the racism that they were and our ancestors were so long ago. So it's really important for me I was so filled with joy when I got the message that I was going to be on the show as a co-host, because it gives you a voice and it gives you a chance to speak your truth, and you can show people that there are thousands of opportunities for you, thousands of opportunities to speak your truth, to have a chance to be yourself. Culture gives you that. This gives you that. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I pass it over to Shrees.
Lucy, thank you so much for sharing your story and your everyone's clapping on the other screens right now, but yeah, thank you for sharing your story and for I guess giving us a bit of an insight of what that gift of time means to you. So thank you for that. I'm really looking forward to having you here on the show with us today as we continue to explore what the gift of time means. So last week on the show we had Bobby hosting as we explored the theme of mentors, not saviors. We had some amazing guests and co-hosts on. We had Auntie Denise Proud, who shared her story on Thursday as our keynote, and that was really great. I want to take the time to acknowledge that this week would have been NAIDOC week, which is a really great week of celebration for Aboriginal people across the country, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across the country. So it started off as the National Aborigines and Islanders Day Observance Committee. I had to write it down because I've forgotten it, but now it's NAIDOC week, and I know that it's been moved to the 8th of November now, but just know that there's still lots of things happening online for us all to come together as a mob and hang out and just celebrate all that it is to be a proud Black Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person in Australia. So I wanted to just quickly say that up top. For me, the gift of time, and I was saying it before on the call, I read this book and it really put into perspective is that time's the most expensive thing that we have. We have lots of money, there's lots of different things in the world that we have, but time's the only thing that's really limited in our lives. So I think for me, gifting my time and putting my time and my energy into certain things is really important. And like Lucy said, when people give you that time to share knowledge and to share different things with me, especially, it's very, I take that really, I can't really find the word for it, but I appreciate it because I understand that time is the most valuable thing. We also have Maddie on the show with us today, who's going to be our other host. Maddie, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, thanks, Sharice. I'm really excited to be joining on today, and we've got an amazing panel coming up. We've got Richard Weston, Bob Smith, and Dr. Tim Sharp as well. So we'll introduce the thinkers right after the next video, but yeah, I'm really excited for it.
If you don't want to work, don't bother dreaming.
Shame is just nothing.
All of us are dealt different cards, and those cards can be awful, but it's what you do. You are responsible for your reaction.
All right. Awesome. So on the panel today, we've got some great people. I'm going to quickly throw it to the YouTube comments. So if you've got any questions for the panel, chuck them down in there and I'll try and get to them ASAP. But for now, I just want our panel members to introduce themselves, how you landed on IMAGI-NATION TV, and then we'll get the discussion talking about the gift of time. So I'm going to start with you, Richard Weston, and we'll go through to the other two panel members.
I'll just start that again. Thanks, Maddie. G'day, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. My name's Richard. I'm a Meriam man from the Torres Strait. So, I just want to pay my respects to the country that I'm on. I'm based in Melbourne. So I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. So I guess wherever we are, we're on Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander land. So pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging. And yeah, I'm really pleased to be here. I work with, I've been working in Aboriginal affairs for a long time. I'm currently the CEO at SNAKE, which is a national advocacy body for children. How I got to be on the AIM panel, I'm not really sure. I had a couple of messages last week, had a couple of conversations, and here I am. So really looking forward to today. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Richard. On to Bob next. Let's go with you.
Yama everyone. As mentioned, my name is Bob Smith, and I quite often remind everyone it's not a fake name. So I'm a proud Kamilaroi man from out at St. George, and raised on Mulunjali country and a Bow Desert. Currently residing in Brisbane on Yagara and Turrbal lands, otherwise known as Mianjin. Currently work for Indigenous education within Department of Education and have done so for around 10 years, around a number of different roles in particular. For myself, I've been asked to participate within this segment at the request of Tom, who looks after AIM for the bottom half of Queensland and maybe even other areas. But I've been involved with helping Tom out with AIM across Southeast region in particular, and the universities around those parts of the world.
Awesome, thanks for that. And last but not least, Dr. Tim Sharp, introduce yourself.
Thank you. Firstly, thanks very much for having me. And just to clarify, like Bob did, Dr. Happy actually is a fake name. My real name is Dr. Tim Sharp. I'm a clinical and academic psychologist by background, but more recently a positive psychologist. I'm the Chief Happiness Officer and founder of the Happiness Institute. I'm a writer, speaker, consultant, mostly working with organisations around building positive culture. I was actually actively involved in AIM a few years ago as a Chief Happiness Officer and mostly running some internal programs around health and wellbeing. But more recently, I've shifted my focus to a youth mental health charity called Batir, where I do a lot of similar work. So my involvement in AIM's been, I have been involved for a couple of years, but I was more recently approached by one of your team just to be on one of these shows and to share some ideas around happiness and resilience. So I'm looking forward to maybe doing that today.
Awesome, thanks for that, guys, and welcome to the panel discussion. So obviously our value for the week is gift of time. Lucy's already had a bit of an approach to that, and Charisse has already said a bit about the gift of time. What is it to you? Opening discussion to all three of you. Anyone can jump in and have a discussion with each other. So who'd like to go first?
We're all going to fight over it. Look, for me, the gift of time, I think it's one of the most important things that we should be valuing. For myself, as a young queer father of 2 children, it plays even more of a role within my life and appreciating every moments that we have. I think the older that we get, the more we appreciate time, especially with our old people. And especially with our young people as well, and being able to shape and inform the young people that they grow into and become, and to be able to support them with being able to be the next custodians, I guess, the next generation of custodians up and coming. So I think, you know, that gift of time that you can offer people, whether it be to yarn, debrief, share cultural practices or knowledge systems and different ways of being, knowing and doing. I think, you know, it's something that we've been doing for many, many generations. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in our lives that we just forget sometimes to sit down and appreciate that time and just sit down and have those basic grassroots yarns and conversations. So for me, I try to, as much as I can, give my community time. And when I say community time, I mean, you know, those yarns out in community, but also with my children, nieces and nephews. And appreciate the fact that everyone's busy, but we always have to make time for those grassroots yarns. So I think, you know, if I could redo my time again as a young person, that's one thing that I would have put more value on, was time. Because you blink an eye and it's gone. And, you know, I think for me, my thing that I value mostly now is being able to sit down and have that yarn with our old people, to share different knowledge systems and to be able to, you know, step into the role of going up into elder leadership at some point in my lifetime. So yeah, for me, I appreciate time in anything that anyone can give me, paid, unpaid. I think sometimes we also need to value the fact that we need to do community service, and you're not always going to be paid to do giving time. And I think that's something that we need to keep instilling in our younger generation, that, you know, just because you give time doesn't mean you get paid for it, but at the same time too, valuing people that do it in a paid capacity as well.
So not only valuing the time that we give to other people, knowing that it's precious, but also realizing when other people are giving their time to us. You know, some kids are choosing to tell you about a topic, and yes, you might get a little frustrated at first, but it's so important to say, you know, yeah, okay, I'm taking the time to listen to you, because out of all the people in the world you chose to tell, you chose me.
That's
so
right.
It's important to realize the gift that they're giving you as well. What do you guys think on that? What about you, Richard?
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. Yeah, I think I find that with my own son, you know, that sometimes, you know, I can take it for granted that he's there, and sometimes take time for granted as well, that that I'm always going to be able to do something at another time. But I think more and more as he's growing, he's 11 years old, this kid, and he's just becoming this great person, and just expresses himself about his love for culture, his strong interest in finding out more about his own mob and his people, and the things that he's interested in the world. And you know, when I do recognise that we're having that important conversation and do sort of just focus on him, I learn a lot about him. I learn a lot about what interests him and how he's feeling about the world. So as everybody said so far, time's really important. It's something we all have. So it is something we can all give. It is a gift we can all give. Yeah, I think that, you know, we can create that space where we can listen to stories. I think Bob was just talking about stories, and I found that working at the Healing Foundation, having the time to listen to a lot of Stolen Generations stories, which I'd only engaged with, I think, on the surface really. But when you dig into some of those individual stories and what happened to children and what happened through their lives and the impacts, you know, what it helped me do was really appreciate the life that I've had. You know, the growing up in a family where we were, you know, we weren't the perfect family, but we were happy and safe, and were able to get an education and those things. And I found many of the people of Stolen Generations just didn't have access to those things and were treated in many ways really badly, but also saw a lot of resilience that came out of that, of what people had been able to survive and then go on and do in their lives. So I think, yeah, time is something that we all have to give. Feels limited sometimes. I know in my work, I always feel like I've never got enough. If only days were a bit longer than 24 hours, but I'm sure I'd find ways of filling them up. So it's one of those things we have to use wisely. And as Bob just said a second ago, yeah, it's something you become more conscious of the older you get, because when you get to my age, you start to feel like it's starting to run out a bit more. So you do put a high value on it. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation this morning.
Fantastic. Lucy, did you might have a question for one of our panel members? I know that our discussion has been mostly around like parents' point of view to children. What about your point of view to adults, or just asking a question around that? What do you think?
Well, obviously there's a very big concept when it comes to gift of time. And I guess I have a question for, I don't know, any of the other panel members is, how has the gift of time really impacted you in day-to-day life?
I'm going to throw Dr. Tim Sharp under the bus because he hadn't had a chance to jump on yet. So that question's gone straight to you, Doctor.
You haven't thrown me under the bus at all. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to such a great question. I guess just to go back, look, a lot of it's been said already, I think, so I don't want to repeat the great wisdom that's already been shared. But I suppose when I think about time, there's kind of two ways I think about it. One is how we use time, and the second is how we can give time, as a few people have touched on. One of the things that's helped me tremendously personally, but also in my professional work, is the philosophy, I suppose, that we're far better off if we focus more on what we can control and try to worry less on things we can't control. And one of the few things in life, or one of the things we do have control over, is how we use our time. And in many ways, that's a version of mindfulness, which is a theme that's become very popular in recent years, but it's been around for a long, long time in many different cultures. So the way that we utilize the present moment is really the essence of how we live our lives, I suppose. How we use our time is how we live our lives, and we can do that in either a positive, constructive way, or we can waste that, and it can have sort of negative consequences. So that gift of how of what we're given and how we use that is arguably the most, one of the most important things in terms of determining the quality of our life. But the other aspect that quite a few people have touched on already is what we can give to others. And obviously we can give money, we can give expertise, we can give all sorts of other things. But I would argue, again, as a few people have hinted at, that probably the most powerful thing we can ever give is our time, and including that, our attention when we're with other people. Because from a psychological point of view, the most important thing in life when it comes to health and well-being and longevity is the quality of our relationships, our connectedness. And we connect with others when we're giving our time, when we give our attention. So that's how I see it. And I guess to come back a bit more specifically to that most recent question, for me personally, it's had a massive impact. One of the things, well, it hasn't come up yet, but one of the things that I'm happy to share is, maybe not happy necessarily, but is that as well as, or despite being called Dr. Happy, and despite being an expert in happiness, I've actually experienced mental ill health for almost all my adult life. I've suffered some quite severe episodes of depression. And when I reflect on that, one of the most important things is how I focus my attention in terms of the past or the present and the future, which is a version of time. So I have a tendency to dwell a lot on the past and to think about all the things I've done wrong and how I've wasted time, and that's not very healthy for me. I also have a tendency at times to worry about the future, which creates anxiety and stress. So when I'm at my happiest, I suppose, or when I'm functioning my best, it's when I'm able to be in the present moment, when I'm able to focus my attention on now as a moment in time, and to try not to have too many regrets or not to have too many worries. That's easier said than done sometimes, but from a mental health perspective, it's something that many of us could probably benefit more from.
Yeah, thank you for that. So even though time can be a gift, sometimes we can give time in a negative way, as in that we almost waste the precious time that is gift on things that are like in our past that we can't change, or in the future that, we are wanting to have agency over, but just don't have that. So sometimes we can waste the time that is a gift, like throwing it into the trash bin. And, there's other ways that we can use our time constructively. Sharice, did you have any questions for our panel? I'm sure they'd like to hear from you.
Look, this is great discussions, and I'm just chilling back here, just listening to everything. But I did like what Bob said about, going back to grassroots and really talking and connecting with community. Like I said at the top end, this was usually NAIDOC week, and it was a time for me to kind of fill my cultural cup, is what I kind of call it, and then it powers me on through the rest of the year. So it's so important. And as I kind of have grown up, I've realized, I guess, like what's been said, how important that time is to really sit down and talk with people. I think as a young, even like a teenager, I just really took that for granted, the knowledge that was in front of me. So as I've kind of come into these later years, I'm not that old, but as I've kind of grown up a little bit, I've learned to appreciate that a little bit more. So thank you for touching on those points. I do have a comment from the YouTube chat line though, from Jade Simmons, and I'm going to throw it out again. Just jump in, anyone can feel free to answer it, or all three of you can. It's, why do you think we have moved away from the idea of giving our time to others in our modern world, and how do we get it back? Big question.
I'm happy to jump in there if that's all right. And I'd actually dispute the premise of that question. I don't think we have. I see on a day-to-day basis many inspirational examples of people giving time, in fantastic examples, and even just what we're seeing today. And again, just to give a plug to my the organisation Batir, there are lots of well, it's easy to get caught up in a lot of the negativity in the world, and there definitely is some bad shit happening. I'm not going to dispute that at all. But it's important not to ignore or forget or overlook the good stuff, the good people doing good things. And I think there are just as many, if not more, good people doing good things, including giving of their time, than there ever has been. So, yeah, at the risk of... yeah, I don't mean to dismiss the question, but I dispute it. I think it's a bit of a myth. I think there are, and particularly young people, I see more young people volunteering and giving of their time now than ever, really. So, which is fantastic.
I think that's a good point you made, Tim. I know that even for myself, the amount of young people and older people, in particular, our elders, the amount of time and commitment that is constantly given across all elements is such a high number of hours that are constantly given at all levels. I think it's an individual responsibility to be able to maintain what the gift of time is. And I think everyone has a responsibility to be able to, do their part with being able to look out for each other during those times. I know that just recently, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, the amount of our mob that, are feeling very heavy at this point in time, it's up to collective responsibility to be able to look out for each other and check in on each other and do that cultural supervision stuff, and I think we all play a role in that. I think we all appreciate time. I think sometimes we just get caught up in things sometimes that don't necessarily require as much as the negative time that we spend on it, and start, being a little bit more proactive with the positive spaces that we do go into. But yeah, I think I agree with you, Tim. I think it's definitely something that we're doing a lot more of. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think maybe some people can look at it as in, like, maybe we don't have as much sense as community on like a global scale or as on a national scale, but we do find in everyday life that we are doing that gift of time. We're realizing that we need to connect to people more, especially during a pandemic when we don't have those connections physically anymore. Lucy, do you happen to have any questions for the panel? Any final questions from the YouTube channel or anything you'd like to ask them?
Well, definitely. Someone mentioned, I think, in the comments, a question that they had, and it's how, I think it was, I'll just have, where was it? How can we direct our focus into the present moment to give ourselves and others the gift of time? And I just wanted to direct that question to the panel members.
I'll jump in there. Look, again, it's a good question because it's easier said than done. I mean, there's a lot of people, talked about or written about living in the moment, and versions of mindfulness. And we all know how difficult that can be. There's so many distractions. But I guess the simple answer, and so I can try and leave some time for the others, the simple answer from my perspective anyway, is that it's like a skill, I guess. And the more you practice it, like any other skill, the better you can get. So mindfulness or focusing on the present moment, or whatever you want to call it, requires practice and mastery. And just like, I guess you can, if you go to the gym every day, or not, we can't do that anymore because of the pandemic, but if you exercise every day, you can build up your muscles. Well, if you exercise your mind, in a sense, by refocusing and focusing your attention, you can build up your that muscle in a sense as well. So yeah, I just say practice.
Awesome.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I think just making a plan for it and just being conscious, that time is something you've got to take you have to plan it a bit, and just recognize when you are, being present and giving people time. I think that's really important. It's important for yourself as well. I think I found that just attending the Black Lives Matters march, just to be there, just to be amongst it and pay some, in some small way, pay a respect to the passing of George Floyd in the US, but also to recognise what's going on in our own. That's a really tough question but it is about planning, being aware, and really, just taking moments, to connect with people, but also you need to take time for yourself as well and connect with your own thoughts and your own feelings, and really try and put them into some kind of try and understand them, I guess. So, yeah.
Thank you for that, guys. There's a couple of great messages coming from the panel today, some of which are, be in your present moment. So if you need to put your phone upside down or on silent, or really be not just hearing what someone's saying, but actually actively listening. We can learn about active listening, and being a part of community are a couple great messages. But the final one that Richard just touched on at the end there was giving time to yourself as well. It's important to do a little bit of self-care. So thank you for that, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm going to pass to Charisse now, and thank you for being on the panel today.
Yeah, before we wrap up, do you have any questions for one another that you want to ask, or no? Awesome.
I just think Dr. Happy's a great title.
It's the best title to have.
And I do think that Bob Smith is a real name, so I do believe that.
Thanks, Richard. Hey, while you're off mute, if you could give any kid around the world any piece of advice in 30 seconds, what would it be?
Any kid?
Anyone.
Look, just, just front up to life. Life is just really amazing. Embrace it. Be a critical thinker. Just love it. Just value it. And don't take advice from old people.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Richard. Dr. Happy, same thing to you. 60 seconds. What's a piece of advice that you'd offer to any child around the world, in anything?
60 seconds. Look, if I have to try and keep it really brief, I'd say, and it sounds a bit cliche, but I say, be yourself. I think too many of us waste so much time trying to be something we're not, trying to please other people, but be yourself. And it's okay if yourself is fucked up, excuse the language. Like, it's okay not to be okay. We're all just struggling our way through. We're all bumbling our way through. And that's perfectly fine. That's what makes us human. So be okay with whoever you are. Be okay with whatever uncertainties or you have. And just do the best you can with other people, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. It's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to work with and be with others.
I love everything about that. Thank you so much. I think people really need to hear it, especially now. Like, be yourself, and even if that is not someone that's always put together, like I like to think that I am. So it's really cool just to hear that. Thank you for that. I took so much out of that little bit just then. Bob Smith, definitely a real name. 60 seconds. What advice would you offer to a kid?
Was I think for me, I really encourage all young people, and even adults, but most importantly young people, to be patient. Patience is one thing that you will need moving forward in any career that you go with, and do just as much listening as you are talking, as you're growing into what you want to become and where you want to go. And especially when you're going into the space of creating change and systemic change for mob, make sure you understand what you can as much as you can, and just remember that you have 2 ears for a reason. And I think, one quote that I quite often will repeat, and we all know our great Maya Angelou, and she made a quote where she says, do the best until you know better, and then when you know better, do better.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to the whole panel for that great discussion. We really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's great to have great thinkers on the show and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. Yeah, thank you. We're going to jump over to a video from, I'm going to say this wrong and I know it, Sadia. Maddie, can you help me? No?
Cedar, maybe? Cedar?
Yeah, Anderson, who is the inventor of Flow Hive. So she speaks to Jack in this next clip, and yeah, let's get into it.
Cedar, thank you for joining us on AIM TV. What's brought you here today and what's been your journey to landing in AIM TV land?
Thanks for having us, Jack. Yeah, look, my journey is about bees and inventing. I grew up on a community near here in the forest, in the trees. We didn't have TV, we didn't have things to distract us so much, so we were out there playing with in the workshop, in the forest. I guess I've always been a dreamer, so when I look at things I think, well, there must be a better way to do that, So there I was beekeeping, and beekeeping to actually sell honey is a lot of work. Like you're out there, you're sweating in your bee suit, you're pulling apart the hives, which the bees obviously didn't like too much because they try and sting you. Then you've got to get all of those honeycomb frames into the shed. You've got to go through this long process of uncapping the frames and spinning them in a centrifuge. And I just thought there had to be a better way than that. So I started dreaming up this idea of honey coming out of the beehive just like a tap, where you could turn a handle and the honey would come out.
So what actually happens when the bees come in with the nectar? Where do they land it, and how does honey actually get created?
So the bees collect nectar from, say, a 3 kilometre radius, up to 10 if they're quite hungry. They bring that nectar back to the hive. Now, the nectar's quite watery, so they have to reduce it and turn it into the honey we like to eat, and they like to eat. While they're flying, they even start that process by dribbling the nectar down their tongue and waggling it in the air. And when they get to the hive, they actually pass that nectar onto another bee, and that other bee actually puts it into the cell.
And what have you guys done that's special?
So what we've done is build a hexagon matrix. The bees then attach their wax to that and build the honeycomb out further. Then when it's ready, which you can see from the outside, you can then turn that handle, and what happens inside the honeycomb, the cells move like this, and the honey then flows down this zigzagging path to a collecting trough at the bottom and out of the hive.
So once you made your first one, did you have a moment where you thought, man, this could be something?
I remember just lying back on the grass going, unbelievable. It actually works. After a decade of working away, we turned the handle and the honey came out. So what we ended up doing was making a video of what we had invented and putting it on a crowdfunding website. And we had 1 million views in 30 hours. We had so many people pressing refresh on the keyboard that we crashed the Indiegogo, one of the biggest crowdfunding platforms in the world. And then it just escalated from there over the next 2 months and ended up being over $12 million US in orders of our actual hive that we hadn't made yet.
What does your invention do apart from saving beekeepers from getting bitten by bees? What is it that you've done that can help the environment?
Flowers need pollination. For a flower to fruit, for a flower to seed, it needs pollination. And without pollinators, our food chain is drastically reduced. what we've done is we've inspired so many people to take up beekeeping. And then what that does is it starts to create these corridors where pollinators can live, where they can move from one place to the other. And it's a really important piece of education.
Brother, thank you for inventing and thank you for making the world a better place. Thanks for joining us on AIM TV. You're the man. See you guys. Bye.
Finding out about that. Hey, Lucy, how's the show been for you?
Oh, it's been fantastic, you know, to hear so many people's different perceptions on what they feel is the gift of time. And I remember a quote that was, I think it was by an author, and he said, "A treasured memory is the lasting gift of time well spent." And through everyone's speeches and everyone's ideas and opinions, that same quote just kept coming through my mind. And I thought, this show is impacting and enforcing change and helping people to understand our culture and how important it is that our traditions and our culture stay alive.
Yeah, well, I can't think of a better way to wrap it up than that last bit of wisdom. That was great. So I'm going to wrap up the show now. Thank you to Lucy and Maddie for co-hosting we're hosting alongside me. For Tim, Bob, Richard, thank you guys so much for being on the show today, and we will catch you all tomorrow.